Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch took the podium Wednesday to give their offseason kickoff press conference and had some interesting things to say, especially about the quarterback position for the 49ers. Trent Williams hinting at retirement, Jimmie Ward going scorched earth on IG Live, all that and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
To Locked On 49ers, Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you once again at BD Peacock at Eric_Crocker. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is presented by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 6 players. If they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com. Promo code Locked On. Some interesting nuggets today, and never a dull offseason, Croc, especially when it comes to the quarterback position with the San Francisco 49ers. First of all, I want to address there was some erroneous reports out there about Tommy John surgery for Brock Purdy. That was just some, it just got amplified. It was like some guy who was on, I think it was on Dan Patrick or some radio show. It was just a random doctor, hadn't seen the MRIs, that said, oh, it's probably Tommy John or something. And I think people took that and run with it. I saw a ton of people saying, oh, Brock Purdy's having Tommy John. It's like, no, there was no official report about that. I think we're still waiting on some information on the second opinion from Brock Purdy with some independent doctors about what the path is. So who knows? Maybe Tommy John's still on the table, but that's certainly not been the report as of yet. In the San Francisco 49ers, judging by John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, certainly operating under the assumption that it's the first reported surgery possibility where it's a 6-month recovery time for Brock Purdy. But then there was more interesting things beyond that John and Kyle said, Croc. And I think we got to start with the comment about Trey Lance's injury. And Trey Lance is scheduled to be ready for, phase 3 or phase 2 or whatever it is. I forget what the phases are. I don't think Kyle Shanahan even knows what the phases are. But basically by OTAs, when they're actually doing football work on a field somewhere right before the draft, I think it's going to be fine for Trey Lance to be out there.
It sounds like he'll be 100% cleared.
Yeah, he'll be good.
There's no build up. It's like he's ready to go.
Right. So Trey Lance is QB1 for the offseason until Brock Purdy comes out, until further notice, until something else crazy happens, which who knows what will happen with the 49ers. You can't really ever 100% rule anything out because, as we know, we don't know if anybody's going to be alive Sunday. But one nugget that it was actually John Lynch that said about the health of these quarterbacks, and he made it sound like Trey Lance is more injury prone than Brock Purdy, and really we've never even heard him say that about Jimmy Garoppolo, who's been the most injury-prone quarterback the 49ers have had in a while. I thought that was very strange, and I don't know if we're looking too much into it, which we probably are here in the offseason, but Croc, what do you think about that comment from John Lynch?
Yeah, I mean, they've all been hurt. Trey Lance, he's had limited playing time, and maybe it's just over the shortest time, I guess, right? Because look at when his injuries happened. The first one banged his knee up, and then was going to likely miss the next game. And it sounded like he was scheduled to start, right? Like that next game against the Colts in 2021. And then
yes.
He had the little finger injury in that preseason. And then, obviously, this year, he broke his ankle. And that happened in, it wasn't a whole lot of games in between those things happening. But Jimmy Garoppolo with the 49ers, he did start 5 games. And then 3 games into the next season, tears his ACL. And we've seen his injury history up and down with the 49ers. He's had one healthy year. And now you got Brock Purdy, who had the oblique injury and was playing with a lot of pain. So that's a quote-unquote injury. Mm-hmm. And that happened in his first start, which guys get banged up all the time.
Right.
And then now, it's not like he's played an entire season. We're talking about, 6-7 games into, starting, or 8 games, however long it is.
Yeah.
He messes his elbow up to where he can't do anything for 6 months, or at least the build up, right? And that was the way Kyle Shanahan explained it. The 3 months rest, and then you got the 3-month build up, and then he'll be good to go. But I mean, that's a 6-month injury. So to me, it just sounds like They're all injured. They all have to prove that they can stay healthy. And he kind of singled out Trey Lance.
Yeah, it's par for the course too. But I guess when you consider that Brock Purdy only had one minor and one major injury in 8 games, maybe that is longer than Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance. So who knows? Maybe he's an Iron Man if that's the case. But he was a lot more healthy.
If you're playing for the 49ers, that is considered an Iron Man at that position.
Right. And then which begs the question, why are 49ers quarterbacks getting hurt so much, right? And of course, Kyle Shanahan was asked this question. And it's funny because the season ended just like it started. These were the questions in week 2 for Kyle Shanahan, which is probably why he was so short with his answer and sounded so annoyed with that question. It's the same story now as he kicks off the offseason to end the 2022 season proper. And basically his response was, his response was, yeah, it's not me, it's not the call, it's not the offense.
He told someone to use common sense.
Yeah. I have the quote right in front of you. He was short with his answer, and he basically said, yeah, you see what it looks like when we just hand the ball off every time. We didn't get any more quarterbacks hurt in the NFC Championship. Stop throwing the ball, which is a great point. But clearly, Kyle Shanahan is putting, at the very least, he has to acknowledge, and this goes back to the question, we talked about this, a couple days ago, maybe it was yesterday. I don't even remember anymore what day it is, to be honest with you. We are in February now. I know that. And, I said, you can't really put this one on Kyle Shanahan. This is the offense he runs. Tight ends get singled up in pass protection sometimes with the play action passing game, has been illustrated by a lot of people. But there are coaches who have worse passing games, worse play action passing games that don't ask their tight ends to block one-on-one with a really stud pass rusher, right? And so do you pick your spots more, Croc? That's sort of the question here. You can't be surprised that one of the outcomes with Tyler Kroft blocking singled up one-on-one blocking Hassan Reddick, that one of the things that could happen is your quarterback gets absolutely destroyed. That's one of the things that can happen, right? And it's probably less likely if you have an offensive tackle or if you have a chip or a double team, or there's a number of things you can do, right? Maybe your play action is less effective, but it does make it more likely your quarterback gets hurt. And going back to the Trey Lance thing, it absolutely does make your quarterback more likely to get hurt if he's carrying the ball, right? If he's carrying the football, especially getting sandwiched between 300-pounders and 250-pounders. So you can't act like it's zero responsibility and that it's outlandish to consider that maybe things could be different if these quarterbacks were utilized a different way, if the schemes were utilized a different way. But it's also not completely on Kyle Shanahan. He's trying to operate the best offense he can. This is how he sees it fit. And do you want him to operate a worse offense just to try to keep his quarterback healthy? And I don't think that's realistic either. But Kyle has to really, and he doesn't want to admit it, but we've actually heard him admit it in other interviews that isn't like a post-game or a press conference type situation. There's that quote he had talking about, I don't remember who he was talking to in the interview, but he was talking about Johnny Manziel. And everybody was instantly like, he's talking about Trey Lance right now, And so he knows it, like Kyle knows it, but he doesn't care. And so he has to come with that, not that it's ridiculous that anybody would look at the 49ers and say, you get injured more, there's got to be a reason. And he acts like there is no reason. Well, there is a reason, but clearly he doesn't care. He's trying to operate the best offense he sees fit. And the health of his quarterback is secondary. He's not trying to get him hurt, but he's not protecting him as much as maybe some other coaches might think they want to protect their quarterback.
When you hear George Kittle in the locker room rattle off how many quarterbacks he's had to play with in his tenure as a 49er and the only one season where he played with one quarterback the whole year, it's really wild, right? So guys are getting hurt. And if you go back kind of, Kyle Shanahan's history, I think the one glaring one is probably RG3 and what happened with him and his injury history early on. I mean, what quarterback hasn't really gotten hurt for him, right? With that, just played a lot of games for him, did not get hurt. Matt Ryan, and that's it. So I guess there is Matt Ryan where he could look to and say, hey, 2 years, we played a lot of games, went to the Super Bowl, did all that. He did not get hurt. He didn't miss a game. So clearly it's more luck or bad luck than my play calling because this quarterback over 2 years did not miss any time. At least that would be if I'm Kyle, that would be my argument.
Mm-hmm. It's a fair argument. And that's why we have to talk about...
real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Also, though, and I just brought this up because Matt Ryan did get hit on a deep drop play action pass, fumble return for a touchdown in the Super Bowl.
Oh, right.
And it was coming
right.
from that. It was coming off that right side.
Uh-huh.
And that could have been the same thing that happened to Brock Purdy, where you're going and, your elbow gets hit a certain way, fumble. Because, I mean, that is what happened. That's what happened to Matt Ryan on that play. He just didn't get hurt. So, again, similar play action, play style. Is it his play calling or is it just bad luck? I don't know.
When you consider where the 40, you just have to follow, what the statistics tell you. And the statistics tell you that the 49ers are getting hurt more often. So there's something going on there. And I think anybody knows where, why, and how that's happening. And we've talked about it a lot. But the reality is there's a gray area here. There's context. There's a gray area. And a lot of times fans and, certain media members are wired a certain way. Certain fans are wired a certain way. And it's an all or nothing proposition, right? But in reality, we live in a gray area. And there's a lot of context involved here with some of this stuff. And I think that's what we're talking about here with Kyle Shanahan. Will he learn to be maybe a little more conservative with how he protects his quarterbacks so he doesn't have to continue to go through this? Does he not care at all? Will this end up ruining his career as a head coach for the 49ers? Will they stumble through another season or two to the point where he gets even blamed more and the 49ers can't get to the Super Bowl ultimately and win it, which is the goal, right? Or do we see a season where it's like, okay, well, now we just got a little bit better luck here. 49ers hoisting the Lombardi, Trey Lance, Brock Purdy, whoever is holding it up. You win a title. Now Kyle Shanahan goes to the Andy Reid section wing of the Hall of Fame instead of being the coach that can't win it all, right?
And one thing that he has shown, because there's a lot of people calling for his job, and we will talk about that, but the 1 year his quarterback did play every year, he did go to the Super Bowl and was a missed overthrow to Emmanuel Sanders from winning a Super Bowl, right? Mm-hmm. So he would say, look, this is what it looks like when my guy plays. I just need them to figure out how to make it through the entire season.
So we're living in the gray area here on Locked On 49ers, trying to be as real as possible with all of these things. Is Kyle Shanahan perfect? No. Does Steph Curry hit every three? No, but he's the best shooter in the league, right? Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback ever. Congratulations on your retirement. He is not going to be a San Francisco 49er this year. Probably. Maybe 99.9%, right? You never know with Tom Brady or the 49ers. He's the greatest quarterback ever. He didn't win a Super Bowl every single year. They fell short sometimes. They got beat sometimes. He threw some interceptions. He made some bad plays. You can be great. You can be good. You can be great at your job and not be perfect. And I think that's what we're talking about with Kyle Shanahan. And I think the 49ers are pretty lucky to have who they have in charge of the team, even if they're not always perfect.
I think one thing is for sure, it really shows how difficult it is to win a Super Bowl.
Yes. Absolutely. You need to be good and lucky at the same time in a lot of ways. Next, let's talk a little bit more about that press conference. Maybe a hint of Trent Williams. Oh, no, that he might be closer to hanging him up than I think maybe Kyle Shanahan and pretty much every single 49er fan would like. And a lot more coming up on this episode of Locked On 49ers, which is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. This year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. That's why we're so excited about our new sports betting partner, because it is America's #1 sports book, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better because there's so many great features and ways to make betting on sports fun and easy. The first thing that jumps out is just the website and the interface, and the app is so fun, so easy to use. Make bets super easy, super simple. Even build your own parlays at FanDuel. Of course, there's point spreads, money line, who will score the first touchdown in the Super Bowl. There's draft props at FanDuel. And if you download FanDuel now, you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. And best of all, you get paid your winnings instantly at FanDuel. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and now the Locked On Podcast Network. Speaking of the network, Croc, you are in Mobile, Alabama. Those of you that are watching on YouTube might notice his background is a little bit different. Locked On is at the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama, giving you inside analysis from the hosts that cover the NFL's next generation in college and find out which NFL draft boards these players will be climbing, all in one location. Subscribe to Locked On NFL Draft for nightly live shows from the Senior Bowl, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday this week, 9 Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And of course, we're going to get some of Croc's insights on what he's seen at the Senior Bowl. They might pertain to your San Francisco 49ers since, it is draft season. Kyle Shanahan wasn't worried about the comments from Trent Williams, who had a long, grueling season. He's in his 30s. He's going into his age 35 season now in the NFL. And Kyle thinks that, give him a couple weeks. When things get going, he'll be fired up for a new season. But Trent Williams started to look at himself in the mirror and recognize his own mortality a little bit and might have been worn out by another long run to the NFC Championship. He's actually hurt for the NFC Championship last year. And does that worry you a little bit? You do start to see with this team, okay, injured quarterbacks, the 49ers can't figure out their quarterback quite right, even though they've won a lot of games still. And you think you have a couple, maybe you have 0, maybe you have 2, maybe you have 1, right, at quarterback. But if you have none, and then with all the injuries that are team-wide really with the 49ers and guys that are banged up and Trent Williams who could hang them up soon. Your other offensive tackle, Mike McGlinchey, is a free agent. Guys like George Kittle have put a lot of wear and tear on their bodies, and Kittle's now hitting that 30-year-old threshold as well. Maybe the window isn't as wide open for as long as we think, Croc, as it pertains to this team. So do you feel like there's some urgency going into this offseason to get back and pass the NFC Championship and win a Super Bowl next year?
Well, one thing's for sure, it's a lot harder to address that tackle position when you don't have a first-round pick, second-round pick, third-round pick, or you do have a third-round pick, but it's a comp pick, so it's damn near a fourth-round pick, right? So this would not be an ideal spot to lose a guy like Trent Williams, and it is tough. You play a long season like that. I remember just going through training camp and just being like, oh my gosh, like if I got cut tomorrow, I wouldn't be upset because you're just exhausted. Mm-hmm. Now, put 17 games plus the 3 postseason games on top of that, 20 games. Like, dude, that is a lot. That's a lot, especially on someone that's aging. Like, he is old. I think we look at Trent Williams, and he's played at such a high level, and we kind of forget, like, this dude's like 35, 36 years old, or however old he is. Like, so that's a lot. That's a lot that you're putting your body through. I'm 35 years old, and I know what it feels like after just working out. Now, again, I'm not this high-level NFL player, but I just work out, and it's like, dang, I feel it. I can only imagine just banging with all these young guys. Pause. Just, blocking these young guys for, all season long, and just what it does to your body. That's got to be tough. I'd be thinking about retirement as well.
It's fair. And he's had plenty. He's had plenty in. Actually, this is probably one of his healthiest seasons in his NFL career. He's only played 2 16 full regular seasons in his NFL career. It was 16 games, now 17 game seasons. He's only done that twice in his NFL career. He's been in the league for 10 years. Like, you take a pounding as an offensive lineman in the NFL, and you may not notice it as much because guys can play a little bit more through pain because they don't have to move around as much, and they're not, out wide and carrying the football, so you might not notice their injuries as much. But, man, it takes a toll on some of these guys. And, going deep into the playoffs every single year, and he's even had the, even more medical history with, the misdiagnosis and everything that happened with him in Washington too. So, and then the way the 49ers season ended, that had to be mentally taxing on every player on the 49ers. And we saw a couple of different reactions. For Trent Williams, it was kind of exhaustion. And for Jimmie Ward, it was going crazy as a free agent on Instagram Live, kind of, just reinforcing what we had already talked about. Well, Jimmie Ward's probably not coming back to the 49ers. I don't know if anything he said was too crazy, but I want to talk about that next. But yeah, it was, as it pertains to the 49ers and Trent Williams, you hope he doesn't hang him up because he's still the best tackle in the league. You hope he can keep going. But at some point you have to realize, man, offensive tackle is a huge need for the 49ers. They don't have a lot of cap space, and they don't have any picks where you would normally take a starting offensive tackle. So they got to hit the trade market if that's the case. They got to draft and develop, maybe get lucky, one of those 5th-round guys. I know it's not unheard of, and the 49ers were able to utilize a 4th-round pick plus to trade for Trent Williams. Can they find another trade partner for the right tackle position? Maybe the left tackle position is something you got to keep an eye on. So offensive tackle is a need. Defensive tackle is a need. Maybe another pass rusher. There was not super kind words talked about with Drake Jackson where they were like, yeah, he looked kind of good, and then he kind of just couldn't play anymore. Like,
he looked good until he didn't, and he lost all his strength and he sucked.
Yeah. That was like the rookie wall. That was like one of the most obvious rookie walls I've ever heard of, right, with Drake Jackson. And he wasn't like starting either. So he didn't have enough reps to hit that rookie wall. But we had talked about, remember, he's a little soft in the body. Like, and no offense, like, dude, just a beast. You know, if I walked up next to him, he's an in shape, highly trained athlete compared to a regular person. But when you see defensive ends in the NFL, it is just rocked up, especially like those pass rushers, right?
Well, when you look at him standing next to Nick Bosa,
right?
And, and it's a little unfair, but it's like, well, you are next to him, you're on the same line as him, so you're gonna look at Nick and what he looks like, and then you look at Drake Jackson, and you're like, this don't look the same.
Another offseason, but we saw it last year with Aaron Banks. Aaron Banks changed his body in the offseason, right? So if he's wired the way where he's like, I'm going to be ready this year, and he's 265, chiseled, ready to go in camp, I mean, that'll be a great sign, you know, because he's got so much talent.
It takes a lot of discipline, like self-discipline. And you want to go eat the chicken wings and the burgers, and you want to do all that. But I bet you if you looked at what Nick Bosa, like his diet, is probably very, very disciplined.
Yeah, and Nick Bosa talks about how he's just a really boring human being because all he cares about is football and what goes into football every second of every day and everything he eats. And it's like a lot of us human beings don't operate like that. We're like, I want to eat the good thing, and maybe I'll work out too, you know?
You got to challenge yourself though. Especially if you're Drake Jackson and you hear your head coach say those things about you, right? That has to be a wake-up call. And the good thing about Kyle, though, that's not the first time he's heard it from Kyle. I can guarantee you that. Kyle stands up there and says it. Kyle has said it to Drake Jackson as well.
Mm-hmm. He knows.
So that should be that. All right, like this offseason, I am like, hey, Nick, do you have a spare bedroom? Can I just come stay with you? I really need this offseason. Yeah, dude. Of course, man.
And it's his first NFL offseason too. So I think that'll help. And he fluctuated weight so much in college because of what he was asked to do, and then draft prep. It's a weird situation for rookies in the NFL. So, and look, he's not the first guy to go in Kyle Shanahan's doghouse. We usually hear about it with the offensive side of the ball, but he's not the first guy to go in Kyle Shanahan's doghouse. And we've also seen people come out of Kyle Shanahan's doghouse. So now it's up to Drake. Next, let's talk Jimmie Ward. Pretty much guaranteeing that he won't be back with the San Francisco 49ers next. Today's episode brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. And what's so easy about PrizePicks? Well, you're not picking an entire team. You're just picking 2 to 6 players. If they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 25 your money on that entry. And it's every day. That's the beauty about daily fantasy, right? Because whether it's the Super Bowl or NBA or Major League Baseball or NHL, we're talking golf tournaments. We're talking college hoops. The tournament's coming up here pretty soon. March Madness. There is soccer, WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing, you name it. You can find projections at PrizePicks. And you're not playing against a bunch of sharks. You're not playing against a bunch of people. You're not putting together an entire team. You just go to look at the projections at PrizePicks and think, man, I think Tiger Woods is going to shoot under that. So I'm picking that. And I think that Patrick Mahomes is faking an ankle injury. He's going to go big in the Super Bowl. So we're going to go more than his passing yards, right? And then if you hit it, you win it. Entries can be made in less than 60 seconds, and PrizePicks is currently operational in 30 states, including Canada. So download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com, sign up to play daily fantasy sports, and first-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. Don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Speaking of Kyle Shanahan being bluntly honest with his players, I love the insight from Jimmie Ward on his IG Live on Tuesday night, talking about how he was pretty upset. And I think we knew that. You could tell even in his play on the field, but it had been reported that, he wasn't necessarily happy about losing his free safety job to Sean Gibson and being moved to the nickel spot.
He told us during that time, someone asked him a question about it. It was right around there. And it was very clear he did not want to play the position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was painfully obvious. And so he talked to Kyle Shanahan about it and said, Kyle Shanahan's like, okay, you want to play nickel? Well, do you want to sit on the bench then? And I think it's hilarious. I think it's hilarious from both sides that Jimmie Ward's telling us about it, and that's the response from Kyle Shanahan. And some people would point to Kyle and say, he's not a good leader because he's not propping his players up. But I think we know that this is Kyle. And if he's going to answer questions to a reporter a certain way and be a little bit annoyed by some questions. He's a pretty honest guy. I think he's going to be even more brutally honest to his players inside the locker room. So, yeah, Drake Jackson knows, and, yeah, Jimmie Ward knew. And the question I have is, did they not like something about Jimmie Ward that he would lose his job, or they just thought it was better for the teams? Like, this guy's playing good, so you got to play nickel. Sorry.
I think the defense was just rolling. Gibson was out there making plays, and how do you remove him? I mean, Gibson had more interceptions in this season than you've ever seen from Ward in any 1 year. Now, I'm not saying interceptions is the end-all be-all and, oh, you're so amazing because you're getting interceptions. But, hey, man, dude's out there making plays. Hufanga is playing extremely well. It's like we're not going to disrupt this chemistry that the secondary has going on and this defense in general. So I understand it. Where it's like, all right, but we're still going to find a way to put our best 11 guys on the field. Nickel was a spot for him. It was very clear early on that he just wasn't embracing it. And I was like, it's not looking good with him at nickel. And I remember bringing that up. But then as the season went on, and I think you could see him embrace it, and he looked like Jimmie Ward again, and he's talking trash, and he's doing that. And I'm like, okay, he's back. And he finished the season very strong at the nickel spot.
Mm-hmm. I don't remember which game it was, but I remember us talking about how he didn't look right, wasn't playing well. Teams were targeting him in the slot, and that clearly he didn't want to be there. And then I remember
Chiefs game. I think it was the Chiefs game.
That was a bad one. That was a bad one all around. Bosa was bad in that. They were also injured on top of it. But then later on in the season, I remember giving him a game ball because he was playing so much better, and he was owning the spot. So good on Jimmie for that. So it sounds like he's probably going to want to try to sign somewhere to play safety. Tayshaun Gibson is a free agent as well for the 49ers. I think it's pretty clear they'll try to bring him back and shouldn't be too priced out by what he's asking for. The question is, with Jimmie Ward, does he want to be back? Would the 49ers even offer him a deal, or is he gone? Because the 49ers do have some reserves waiting to go. Samuel Womack, 5th-round pick from last year. Quantrez Knight was the defensive practice squad player of the year for the 49ers. He could play some nickel, can play some safety, could be a versatile piece for the 49ers. Obviously, they have a ton of draft picks from basically pick 100 on, 10 picks in this draft, so they can definitely pick up a safety. In Croc, we talked yesterday about how DeMeco Ryans could be plucking some guys from the 49ers. Daniel Bullock's the safety coach. Seems to have been doing a really good job because last year it was Tart. We're like, we're going to go with this 5th-round guy, and Hufanga turned out great. Jimmie Ward's hurt. Let's bring Tayshaun Gibson up off the street. Yep, we're fine. So should we just stop worrying about the safety position altogether?
I have stopped worrying about really just positions in general. I look at what's the outcome, what's the production? And so far the outcome or the production of whatever they've done has, for the most part, worked out in their favor. So it's not good for as far as like a content creator because we're supposed to nitpick at everything that they do. But it's hard to argue with a lot of the results that they've gotten. So when the 49ers were 3-4 this year, whatever they were at that time, and they had a losing record, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, hell is freezing over. I'm like, well, I can't worry about this because I saw them 3-5 the year before. And they went to an NFC championship game. Like, they've just shown us that they're extremely resilient and they figure it out. So there are certain things that, I'm not going to, oh man, this one guy, no, I'm pretty sure they got somebody. and they did.
The last bit here from Jimmie Ward, and there was a ton from it, but he said the 49ers have a quarterback problem. He didn't really go too deep into why, though. And he said some nice things about Brock Purdy. What's the quarterback problem? Just that they're hurt right now?
No.
Or is he saying that Trey Lance ain't the dude?
No, I just think they don't. Most normal situations, you just have a quarterback. Like, this is our quarterback. And every year, this is the guy that's going to be leading us. And the 49ers, it almost feels like from week to week, just don't know. So that's a huge quarterback issue, no matter who it is, whether it's a Brock Purdy or Trey Lance or Jimmy G or Josh Johnson, whoever, they just do not know. And if the thing that they can lean on is, well, we have Kyle Shanahan, so we'll be all right. But that's not, if you're trying to sell that to someone, that's extremely difficult. Like, let's say you're a free agent, right? And the 49ers have earned the right to, have the benefit of the doubt when it comes to free agents. But what do you tell a free agent if they say, all right, let's say a receiver. Say you want to get a free agent receiver, which maybe they don't because they got with Jennings and Ayuk and Debo. But all right, who's throwing me the ball? I don't know, but we'll figure it out. Like, how do you sell that to a guy?
We got 2 starters. We're not sure which one it's going to be, but we got 2 starters. That's what Kyle Shanahan said in the press. And I will say, it's pretty clear. Like, Tom Brady retirement, there's not a lot of good fits out there for the 49ers. They got dudes that they believe in, that they spent one guy that spent a lot of resources in drafting, and the other guy who put some damn good film out there, and that the locker room believes in Brock Purdy. Like, it's Brock and it's Trey. It's Brock Purdy.
It's Brock and it's Trey.
That's it.
I think that they are very comfortable with that, right? Like, at the end of the day, if let's say there's a setback with Brock Purdy and Trey Lance has to be a guy, well, we've won a game with him. I mean, obviously limited starts, but we'll be fine. All right. But if you have Brock, well, we know. I mean, we've won a bunch of games with him, so that's probably the more ideal situation for them. The issue is he's hurt. Like, Brock is hurt. He can't throw a football for the next 3 months, and it has to build up to be able to really throw a football.
They don't have anybody that could play a game that's under contract.
Right. Like, if there was a game, Saturday,
yeah,
who would play? I think maybe Jimmie Garoppolo.
Jimmie would maybe have been forced into action unhealthy, and of course Josh Johnson. But now that the season's over, they literally don't have those guys either because they're free agents.
Right. So
they got nothing. They got 0 quarterbacks in phase 1 that can do anything.
So that's a quarterback issue.
Right. Yeah. So that's fair. It's totally fair what Jimmie Ward's saying.
And it's not one of those situations. Let's say I'm trying to think of a guy who got hurt late in the year, a quarterback. I don't know. Okay, let's say Deshaun Watson when he was with the Texans, right? Remember his rookie year, he came in, he's throwing a bunch of touchdowns, he tears his ACL. And he probably missed a bunch of offseason program, or maybe he wasn't as involved. But they knew, well, that's our guy.
Right.
And I think right now the 49ers, because of the Trey Lance dynamic, and then, Brock Purdy, and he plays so well, and he could be our guy. I just think you just don't know. And to me, that's a problem.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean they can't be good. They might be great. Trey Lance, I've said this before, if Trey Lance beats out Brock Purdy and Brock Purdy's healthy and Trey Lance is better, that is awesome for the 49ers. They got a stud-ass quarterback, right? Because Brock Purdy's already looking pretty darn good. And I would bet money, like, obviously, elbow notwithstanding, if Brock Purdy's arm is the same at least, and there's been, a lot of players in baseball that get this surgery and get their elbow fixed, and they do so much rehab, they make everything else stronger, and they actually come back throwing a little bit harder. And, who knows, maybe it ruins his arm, and he's never the same, and then he's probably a backup player just because he doesn't have an extra arm. Right. But very likely, with modern science, he's going to come back. He's going to be throwing the ball just fine. And that's like, I would bet my mortgage that Brock Purdy is at basically the Kirk Cousins tier at minimum in the NFL. Like, I've seen enough of him to be like, this dude's legitimately good. He's a starting NFL quarterback. And that's your floor. That maybe he won't be ready to start camp, but what if he comes back in week 3? Fine. You got Kirk Cousins on your roster essentially, right?
Well,
and Trey Lance could be better. And if he's not, Trey Lance, you got Kirk Cousins essentially.
Yeah, Lance can be. I look at it as you're playing with house money.
Yeah.
Right, because of how well Brock Purdy played. So it's like, at the end of the day, we have a starting quarterback. We just need him to have his elbow right.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, we have this other guy that does have a bunch of talent. Can he figure it out? And if he does, then, oh man, we're better off for it. If he doesn't, well, it doesn't really matter because we have this guy, Brock Purdy, who we just won 7-8 straight games with or whatever it was, and he played very well, and he was efficient, and he ran the offense, and he did all these things. Everybody loves him, and I hear George Kittle talk about him. So, to me, you're playing with house money. This is an ideal situation, and that's how I kind of worded it on Twitter. I tweeted out, this is an ideal situation for Trey and the team because you don't have to worry about this whole back and forth thing throughout OTAs. Brock Purdy's kind of out the picture. Trey, you get all the reps, and what are you going to do with it? And if you stink, all right, whatever, because we still have a guy, but at least we know you stink, and we can figure out what to do from there. But if you do well, then, all right, we got a competition. We still know we have a starter on Brock Purdy, but let's see how this competition looks like. And if Trey does win, then great. If he doesn't, I know I'll be fine. I know you'll be fine. I'm pretty sure all the fans will be fine because Brock Purdy will be your starting quarterback, and you'll be good.
That's right. The only disastrous scenario is if Trey Lance turns out not to be that guy and Brock Purdy's injury is worse and it's Tommy John's
don't
instead.
Even say that.
Right. And so the 49ers are going to bring in some quarterbacks. They're going to bring in a couple guys. They'll bring in a veteran who on the cheap, who probably knows the offense, probably Nate Sudfeld or Croc.
Nick Mullins.
Right? Nick Mullins has already had the same exact surgery that Brock Purdy's had. Knows the offense. Who better to bring into that room than Nick Mullins? Not a threat to be the starting guy if those guys are legit, right? Can play some games for you. So Nick Mullins, Nate Sudfeld, I'd be shocked if one of those two guys doesn't sign with the 49ers in the offseason. Draft a guy late, undrafted free agent. You need a rookie camp arm or whatever. Maybe you find another Purdy. So I think that's the path to me for the 49ers. It's Trey and it's Brock and
it's Croc.
And it's Croc. Yes. It's Peacock. It's Brock. It's Trey, it's Brock, and it's Peacock. And, of course, we'll be back with you tomorrow. Talk a little bit more about some of those Senior Bowl prospects. Who would look good in the 49ers scarlet and gold? Talk to you then right here, Locked On 49ers.